um, Sasha Hodder and David Silver. We're going to try to make this interesting. I know it's a law panel, but we will do our best. So go ahead, Sasha. Why don't you tell us something about yourself and how did you end up being a lawyer in the crypto space?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Sasha Hodder. I started my career actually as a Series 7 trader and have quite a bit of background in the banking side of things, actually in Canada. And then I moved to America and I got involved with a Bitcoin ATM company part-time while I was in law school. And I actually worked with Adela. And we were going through all the money transmission side of operating ATMs. And that's kind of what steered me in this direction.
So I'm actually going to play two roles today. My name is David Silver. I will also be playing Jason Seibert, since almost everyone last night thought I was Jason.
A little closer, Mike.
I'll be playing Jason Seibert as well. Jason's the angry version of David, so it's a nice little touch. So just make sure if you guys want to have a question, you let me know which one you want answered by who. For the last couple of years,
Well, like every lawyer, he can take either side in that case.
So about 2015, I sued the Cryptsy exchange in Florida. I believe it was the first lawsuit in crypto against an exchange. That led to a change in my life. I had been working at a very large Washington, D.C. law firm for 10 years, and suddenly I got into crypto. I was there, for this room, probably not early. For a lot of people, I got in like 2014. I started doing lawsuits between 14, 15, and 16. If there was a lawsuit in crypto, my name was on it. Suddenly, when people, and lawyers especially, found out that I was able to monetize the business, there are lots of lawyers now, and there are a lot more lawsuits. We can talk about which ones are good, which ones aren't, and we'll let Tone pick which ones we're going to talk about.
Well, let's go all the way back to our guess, probably how you and Jason Seibert, right?
Seibert.
How you and Jason Seibert met, and that was the Bitcoin Savings and Trust case, right?
So how many people in this room know who Trendon Shavers is? Look at that. I love it, because this is more than most.
There's like 5 hands went up.
That's 5. Normally, it's just Tony. This is actually how Tony and I met. I was in Washington, D.C., and he started booing me off the stage when I started talking about Trendon Shavers. Trendon Shavers ran the very first Bitcoin Ponzi scheme. And he actually went to jail. He's already out of jail, which is how long ago this was. But he took from now, Jason Seibert was on the other side. He was defending Trendon in front of the SEC. Unfortunately, he lost. That's why, I get to make fun of him, because I was on the other side. My clients got $12 million in judgments, I believe at the price of about $100 a Bitcoin. Sadly, they didn't recover any of the money. Because, as you all can appreciate, there's a difference between having public keys and private keys. He claims all of his coins are gone, Mt. Gox, and we just believe they're in Australia. He actually just got out of jail, but he just ran he found a very easy way. He promised something like 20% ROI weekly. If you can get 20% ROI weekly on anything, chances are you're running a Ponzi scheme. But he was just the first in the space. He was an early adopter. He saw the greed out there instantaneously, and Trendon jumped into it, hook, line, and sinker. He spent about 1.5 years in jail, and he just got out. So hopefully he's going to do good things. Probably missed the ICO time. Maybe he's going to make some money and pay back my clients.
So since you are going to play the role of Jason Seibert, and what were some of the implications out of that case? Because it did have some serious ramifications. If my memory serves me right, as part of that case, the SEC and the judge admitted that Bitcoin is not a security, but they kind of assumed it was de facto money.
So, I don't know if Jimmy left already. I'm going to hire Jimmy for all my cases so that Jimmy can just walk around saying, Bitcoin is money, Bitcoin is money. That would be great for my lawsuits, because it's amazing. Everyone I sue in this space swears Bitcoin is not money and that crypto is not money. What the judge did in that case, I believe it was Judge Monzant in Texas, he kind of split the fence. He basically allowed the SEC to continue with the jurisdiction. And by the way he accomplished splitting the fence was, he basically said, I'm going to say this isn't a security. He was going to be the first one making this judicial interpretation. There wasn't a lot of fight. Trendon actually, he Jason and Trendon's strategy was to really just try and fight the jurisdiction of the case so that he wouldn't have to go to jail. He didn't really want to fight the law of what actually happened factually, because from what Trendon did was, because he was promising you a guaranteed rate of return, it was an investment contract. So he was trying to get out of the context by saying that the CFTC should have had jurisdiction. The court said, well, we're going to deem it money and allowed the jurisdiction to be SEC. That's incredibly boring. All you guys need to know is that was the first case out of the gate. Nowadays, the only case that's really going to matter moving forward is the Tezos case. Tezos is going to determine what is going to be declared as securities under the Securities Acts. I was part of that case. I filed the first federal lawsuit against Tezos. Arthur and Kathleen Brightman, they went around raising money and telling everybody it was a security. They literally attached, like, the motions to dismiss were just filed. There were emails about, like, Kathleen making all these great statements. We actually hired a videographer to follow Kathleen around. She had these really expensive lawyers, and her expensive lawyers were telling her, shut up, stop speaking, don't say anything. And she couldn't help herself. She literally at UCLA sat in a conference room and said, I don't care what my lawyers say. I'm going to tell you the truth. We are rebels, and we are going to release the code tomorrow. Needless to say, her fancy lawyer said, no, you may not do that. So, and she actually, her husband stepped in. Arthur said, oh my God. Kathleen gets very excited. But there now have 5 of the major defense law firms in the country are defending Tezos, the individual defendants, and everyone else involved in that case. The judge has been very, I'm not going to say pro-crypto. I'm going to say the judge has been very liberal in his interpretations of the statutes so far in determining the class and determining who is going to be the lead plaintiff and dealing with counsel. He's taking a slow and methodical approach because he believes, and it's justifiable given the amount of cash value of that case, where the money is actually still there. In Tezos, there's not a real argument being made that the money was stolen. The argument is whether or not it's a security. Kathleen, after they got sued, told everybody it was a donation and they should just expect a tote bag. And people, needless to say, were very upset. What has changed in the Tezos case, as I'm babbling, so I'm going to shut up in a second, is up until about a month ago, a Tezzy cost anywhere between 30 cents and 50 cents when you bought a Tezzy. At the time the lawsuit was filed, Tezzies were trading at $3. In baseball, there's something called the Mendoza line. If you hit under 200, you basically lose your job on the baseball team. Here, 50 cents was the value proposition. If clients came to me, I had to explain to them, you paid 50 cents, it's now worth $3, I can get you 50 cents back. You wanna know how many people wanted to sign up with me? 0. Why would anybody do that? Because all I can get you was rescission. About 3 months ago, it dropped under 50 cents. Now everybody wants their money back. And now they all wanna join the lawsuit because suddenly rescission matters and rescission is good. So where the Tezos community was supporting Tezos and saying it wasn't a security and we should stay out of their hair. Now all the investors are coming back, and now they want rescission and their money back.
So, and the plaintiff lawyer, is that Bill Rustis got that?
There are about 30 bills tied to it also, and the bills tied to it now. The lead plaintiff's lawyers are a law firm no one's ever heard of.
Oh, okay, so it keeps moving around.
Yeah, there's Bill's part of that team of about 6 law firms.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I always get Tezos and Tron confused for some reason, probably because they both start with a T. All right, so we'll probably get back to the security side, but let's talk a little bit about money transmission. There have been a couple of cases. There was several arrests in LA for money transmission by selling through local bitcoins, and I guess that's how you started in the space, Sasha. So what's the latest on that? Like, well, how do people should protect themselves? What should people know if you are gonna, sell some Bitcoin through local Bitcoins or go to buy Bitcoin through local Bitcoins? What's your thoughts on that situation?
Well, the way FinCEN looks at it, there's 3 different classifications. So you're either a user, an administrator, or an exchanger. So if you're a user, you don't need to register with FinCEN. You're just doing a one-off transfer. You and I could do a transfer. And it would be local Bitcoin's job to be registered with FinCEN and record those type of transactions, but you and I shouldn't have much to worry about on that side. But if we're actually in the business of changing money, so if that was our main job and our main source of income, then we would also be considered needing a FinCEN registration as a money service business. And there's a big difference, or the way that that is regulated, there's the federal level with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and then each state has its own money transmission laws. And most states don't require you to do any additional registration, but there are a few states, like New York obviously requires the BIT license. And we did just see New York issued, I think it was the fourth one with Robinhood just this week, but I applied for one for another person last week, and it was a really it's a long and expensive process to get that approved. But so if you're just a user, you don't need one. If you're in the business of doing it, then you're going to require at least the FinCEN registration, which then requires you to collect the KYC information or the Know Your Customer information on everyone that's doing a transaction. And yeah.
Who here has bought or sold a Bitcoin in any manner, way, shape, or form? Who here cares whether FinCEN says you're a money transmitter or not? Nobody. They haven't. The only people they're going after right now, they've gone after, I think, 4 cases, which had a variety leveling of detail. Pennsylvania came out last week and said that you don't need to be a money transmitter in crypto because the crypto actually is not money as defined by the United States right now. It's the movement of where the regulations are going. The governments, the state governments don't care, mostly because FinCEN is, for lack of a better word, I'm going to look at the camera, I'm sure I'll get quoted one day, it's a joke. So because it's a joke and it has no teeth, we'll go back to Cryptsy for a second. Cryptsy's website, all over it said we're FinCEN approved. You get FinCEN approved for $250 and some minimal paperwork. What's happening, you know, in Wyoming, Delaware, there's the Token Economy Tax Act. These are things that, you know, are going to take years, like how a bill becomes a law, you know, that you learned in high school. These are going to take years to make their way through the statutory process. Until that actually happens, none of this really applies. I used to joke around in 15 and 16, there's no point in paying $700 an hour for a lawyer because they were all making it up as they were going along. It turned out to be true. All the law firms who did the ICOs, did utility tokens, and took payment of a utility token for their services and then said it wasn't a security, those guys are all going to lose their licenses. So right now, ultimately, the law hasn't been written yet. And that makes it really complicated for people who are building businesses. There needs to be clarity. The clarity is coming. Anyone who tells you with specificity they know what the law is or what the interpretation of the law is, they're wrong. Now I'm going to play Jason. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You cannot be serious. You're saying that you shouldn't hire lawyers? No, I'm not saying you shouldn't hire lawyers. Of course you should hire lawyers. But my theme is always the same. Don't steal money. If you don't steal money, you're not going to get in trouble. It's the people who are stealing money that are going to get in trouble. So if you don't steal, your lawyers are going to be giving you good advice. And if they tell you that you simply have to do, people asked me how I knew in 2016 whether something was fraudulent or not. I simply said, I was in Miami, the two guys, one guy was from New York City, one guy was from LA, and they were pitching me a company in Thailand. I asked them if they had ever been to Thailand. They said, no, we've never been to Thailand. I'm like, how then do you own a company in Thailand and what you're doing in Thailand? They said, well, that's what our lawyers told us to do. Needless to say, they walked off with $25 million. And their clients now, all their investors are out their money. So yes, you should hire lawyers. Now, I'm not insinuating the proper way to build your business is not by doing it right. Your lawyers are going to give you good advice, and as long as you, as the person who is running the business, don't do something wrong, it's very easy right now to comply with the laws that are already on the books. Do I believe crypto needs its own set of laws? Not particularly. I'm not a big believer that they're going to rewrite the laws and do everything just for crypto. We need clarity. We need, like, you know, the government regulators, the government has to come in. US, London just released their paper in the last week or two with their thoughts. We need clarity. We need to know what the rules are going to be, but there are going to be some simple rules. You're going to become a fiduciary responsibility. You're not going to be allowed to steal money, and you're going to have to tell the truth. These are some basic principles that aren't going to change no matter how the law is written.
All right, that was good. Sasha, have anything else to add?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you think about that law that came out from London. They put a specific definition of a utility token, and I think the Swiss law did that previously. We've seen it in Wyoming. Do you think the US, if they do make some kind of clarity around this stuff, are they going to carve out an exception for utility tokens? Or I don't see it going that way. But.
There is no such thing as a utility token. There is no such thing. Will there be a utility token one day? Yes. I'm not denying the fact that you can build something that a utility token could possibly be beneficial. But the problem is, in the last year or two, in the last 3 years, let's say, what was sold as a utility token was not in effect a utility token. What we're talking about that came out from London, that's a draft. When we talk about the SEC, it's all been draft verbiage. It's been speeches. It's been enforcement actions. We're learning by decree, but we haven't actually seen anyone charged yet. My name is David Silver, and I tell you 2020 is the year of the regulators. A lot of people are going to get indicted. A lot of lawyers are going to get a lot of good business because the regulators are finally going to come and they're going to stop doing low-hanging fruit. So far, all we've seen is enforcement decrees against companies that actually aren't doing fighting back. They're by consent. So we haven't really learned what's going to happen. I personally hope that the first person we see get indicted are the Brightmans from the SEC and the DOJ, and let them be the test case for whether or not something happened and went wrong. They'll fight it, and at least that way we'll get some good case law. But there are a lot of people coming out with opinions, speeches, until we actually get some clarity and some fight back, which we're going to see in the very, very near future. Anyone who tells you they know the answer, they're just guessing.
All right, that's good. I got one more question, and then maybe we'll open it up to questions for the panel. So go ahead and feel free to line up. So this one was really interesting because this happened on, it was a big debate on our show, not the law show, but the other show. Those statements by a senior SEC official at a conference, and it was published in Yahoo. I think Yahoo put on the conference. What was that name? Someone with an H.
Hinman.
Hinman, there you go. So Hinman's statements, and in that statement, he did say like that it's kind of his opinion that Ethereum is not a security. And a lot of people took that as fact, that the SEC is saying Ethereum is not a security. And I think the topic is going to come up sooner or later. So I'm curious on your thoughts. And the interesting debate on our news show was with Giacomo. I don't know if Giacomo is still in the room. We might have walked outside, so he should be able to hear me. There should be a speaker out there. And like, he really hates the concept of the SEC and the SEC. But he really hates that statement because if Ethereum is ruled not a security, their reason was that it's decentralized, and his argument is, but it's not decentralized. So it's like, so if they make a ruling based on wrong facts, what happens? So what do you think of that whole scenario? It's hard to even phrase the question. Like, what do you think the SEC should do in the case of Ethereum? What do you think they will do? Because it could be totally different than what you think they should do.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that the CFTC has recently requested comments from the community on whether or not Ethereum actually is decentralized. Has anyone in here taken the time to fill out that form?
Oh, no. Now, I'm busy,
yeah.
but I think I've done enough content for anyone in here to inform the SEC of what Ethereum is, or the CFTC.
I kind of thought when they put that out that they were maybe listening to these, more Bitcoin, or the fact that Ethereum is not decentralized, or just looking at all the hacks that have happened.
For the record, not a single hand went up, just for the cameras.
Anyway, I thought they were looking at that, maybe not hoping, but like if people would give a lot of comments saying that it's not decentralized and that Hinman's speech had a lot of flawed reasoning, then maybe the CFTC might reject it as a commodity and push it back over to the SEC and say, well, it was sold via an ICO. But I think the current state of things is that the SEC has not prosecuted anyone that has done an ICO prior to the DAO notice, and it's almost like they're giving everyone a free pass before that because they hadn't put out any comments to say what they thought. But after they gave us pretty clear indication that these ICOs were going to be looked at as investment contracts, after that, once people are on notice, it's fair game to go after them.
And what do you think of that free pass, David? in your answer.
let's take one step back. Hinman giving a speech is the equivalent of me giving a speech. It has absolutely no impact. He knows it, I know it, and no matter what he says, he gave the biggest carve out. He basically carved out the pre-sale. So you can't really carve out the pre-sale because what's going to happen is, and anyone who speaks to me knows, I believe Vitalik's working with the government already. I believe that he has already come to some arrangement with them about what the penalty is going to be. But the government is not stupid either. They know they can't unwind every single transaction at this point and just declare it illegal. So what do I think should happen? It's centralized. It's a security. What do I think will happen? They're going to announce that Vitalik, working with the government, pays a $50 million fine, and that they're going to say that the pre-sale was illegal, for lack of a better word, and they're going to let everything else move forward and saying it's now sufficiently decentralized. I think that's a joke. I think the prior panel articulated much better than I can. But if 8 guys can get on a phone call and actually stop the hard fork, it's clearly still centralized. But you can't really stop everything, and they're going to pick better fights than that.
All right, I think that clears it up. All right, let's go right there. Just tilt the mic to yourself and speak right into it.
Hi. U.S.
Uh-oh.
U.S. citizens are required to file, they have foreign accounts annually, an FBAR. If you have accounts valued over $10,000, foreign accounts.
Yeah, and the fine on that is ridiculous.
It
It's
is.
half
It's
the value,
insane.
half the value of your foreign account every year. So
Yes.
if you forget for 3 years, you owe them
You're done.
1.5 times your money.
So my question is, do you see or do you hear of anything that would come along that would force people to voluntarily
Yeah,
expose
would Bitcoin,
Yeah.
could Bitcoin find itself in an FBAR situation?
I can't answer your question. Let's just be clear on that. What I will give you the example for, which is not answering your question at all, answering a completely different question, is if you had money at Coinbase and you were off-ramping your money into USD from Coinbase or any other US exchange, the government has your transactions. Can they do it from a foreign perspective? They're not able to get the information from the foreign exchanges. So I don't think that we're going to see that trap happen as you're describing. But what I will say is in the US, they already have your information. Just because you don't know they have your information, make sure you file correctly.
Well, that's not necessarily true. because with-
Well,
there's- you
if,
can
I'm sorry,
mix
if
the
you have more than
coins.
$20,000 in your account, then they have your information.
And when they look at a company, for instance, like if you were to sell securities, if you register your business overseas, but you are domiciled, at least 50% of your company is domiciled in America, you're considered an American citizen for tax purposes. So I think the same thing would be if you're an American citizen and you own that Bitcoin wherever that Bitcoin is domiciled, if 50% of you is domiciled here, then you could make the argument that it would not be a foreign-owned
Bitcoin
thing.
is domiciled where your private
Well,
keys are at.
well, forget.
Which is technically everywhere.
Yeah, right.
I'll disagree with, but let's use Roger Ver as an example, because we all know Roger's no longer a U.S. citizen. What happens when Roger transfers his Bitcoin and it goes through a U.S. exchange? I personally can tell you there are lots of whistleblowers out there involved in looking into that specific issue, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the government decides as to where those Bitcoins reside and whether or not those are transactions on U.S. soil when they run through U.S. exchanges. I think that's going to be a very interesting outcome, and I think that that's something that has a high value target that the regulators are looking into.
I just have a problem disclosing information about Bitcoin to the government.
Well,
when
okay, so I think there's like a slight disconnect here. So you have to be very specific whether the Bitcoin you're talking about moves through an exchange that knows who you are versus Bitcoin that has never touched a government compliant entity. So basically, if all the Bitcoin you ever owned were on your own node or only peer-to-peer and it never went through the business, I think something like that would be very difficult for the government to enforce FBAR, and I can't see them. I think they'll know. I think some lawyers will tell them that that's just not enforceable through FBAR.
But what if it went through?
I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said I couldn't answer your question as asked.
So if it went through Coinbase, you reported tax after you moved it off of Coinbase, because once it leaves Coinbase, you got to presume they're going to issue it. If the IRS asks, they're going to issue a reporting
Yeah.
form. So, and then you use Wasabi Wallet to privatize them. They don't know about them. Now they're going to come back and say, oh, we want you to disclose, even though we don't. You've reported everything. You now have private coins. You've got to go out and then tell them again that you have, okay, I've reported it, I've done nothing illegal, but now I got to disclose.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like if you, in my opinion, not a lawyer, if you took them off Coinbase and you paid taxes on that as if
Yeah.
you sold them, like they can't prove that you still have them. Now, if you move them off Coinbase and then you report to the IRS, well, wait a minute, I didn't sell them, I still have them, then yeah, I think they could enforce it then because you didn't pay taxes on that sale. So you should be telling them at least how much you have and where they are, because I think they will be able to demand that because you told the IRS you did not sell them by not paying taxes on them when you move them off Coinbase.
My position is you move them off an exchange, the presumption is you have to report them, even though technically you shouldn't have to do that. But if Coinbase is audited, if the IRS comes to them, they're going to want the information and they're going to look at you. So if I've reported on my return, then they can see, okay, it's reported there.
So I'll
They
give you
moved
the
them off.
easy lawyer answer. This is what Tony needs to learn from a lawyer's perspective.
It
Yes.
depends.
No. Yes. That's the wrong. Yes. You must tell the truth. You're asking, whether forget. Yes. The answer is yes from a lawyer's perspective. No good lawyer can tell you anything else. Now, what a good accountant can tell you is completely different.
I think the moral of the story is don't use Coinbase.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Great setup there. Customs and Border Patrol, $10,000 limit was mentioned. What are your thoughts around having to declare moving across borders into the US and CBP? Thoughts generally, most people are saying, well, your Bitcoin's everywhere, it's nowhere, all at the same time. Are there any cases coming up about this around people coming across with ledgers, with more money, with private keys? Thoughts?
So I am unaware of any actual people getting arrested. What I am aware of people who cross the border who they made demands for them to open their phones and disclose information, and people refusing to do so. So, and now that didn't move very far, but it got very heated very fast, but because no one at that point knew, but they were specifically targeting that one individual. So at the moment, I'm unaware of anyone else, or of there being any government protocols being issued, advisory opinions, telling border agents or anyone to look into this. What's actually crazy, it's on the other side when you're traveling out of the U.S. to certain places where there are conferences right now. People are having issues on the other side, outside of the U.S. at the moment. So, but from internally, no, I'm unaware.
Well, me and my fiance Jeff over there had a personal experience with this. I'm a Canadian citizen, and I was applying for my TN visa, so I had to leave America, go back to Canada, and give them a letter saying I'm employed by an American law firm. And they wouldn't let me back in, so he came to visit me, and we had he had a free Ross poster in his bag, and they wouldn't let him cross the border without putting his thumb on the phone, which he did it because, he wanted to come through the border, but it was a pretty tall order to be asked to open your phone for that. And I think there is a Supreme Court case that says they cannot look at your phone without a warrant. It doesn't apply to laptops, or else Ross's case would be quite different. But they are supposed to require a warrant. But when you're at a border,
Just for U.S. citizens.
yeah, and when you're actually in the airport or like the border facilities, you don't have the rights of your country. So it's a really weird area.
Thankfully, there's no training for it at the moment, so it's not, it might
Yeah.
become an issue. It's not an issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick thought on that. I am now careful. Like, I don't want to travel with the hardware wallet, with the Trezor, with the Ledger. But the hardware wallet companies know that as well, right? So you will have your wallet, different pins on that wallet with different amounts. Like, it'll be impossible for them to know that there are multiple pins on there. So just protect yourself and be aware that, yeah, you could be the unlucky one that was hiring, one of the lawyers because you were the first guy that's making the news because they found your Trezor, and all of a sudden, huge, like, international case, right? So just, I mean, if you want to be that guy, great. If not, I would be careful with traveling with
I
a
spoke-
hardware wallet.
It's coming. I mean,
It's definitely coming.
It's coming. I mean, it's not there today, but
And
it's
the thing is, and it's probably not going to be by accident. It probably will be someone that is expected to have a lot of Bitcoin. Like, it will probably be, but again, I'm a public person, right? So it's way more likely to happen to me than to a random person because they might just target someone that they know will probably have some on a device.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I spoke with one firm that has a policy where any of its employees crossing the border are instructed to completely drain their laptop and cell phone, so that and to pack their power cord in their check-in luggage. So if they have their carry-on, there's no. I guess they could power it up with a different, computer's cord or something, but it makes it a lot more challenging for the border officer to get the laptop or phone open.
Yeah, and also, like, I very often delete my wallet off of my phone as I go into an airport, and then I recreate that said wallet when I get out of the airport on the other side. And some phone wallets make that easier than others. All right, I gotta go over here. But, yeah. Oh, that's what you're gonna say? Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do pretty often.
Because of existing case law that defines cryptography as free speech, as they develop nomenclature for these laws going forward, like I heard you say that Bitcoin is money, but like in the Wyoming laws, which I'm a fan of in spirit, yet they use language like virtual currency or a digital representation of value. Do you ever foresee the possibility that any law, whether it's in favor of cryptocurrency or against cryptocurrency, that those laws could be unwound based on the premise that at the end of the day, this is all just free speech and that all those definitions are inherently meaningless? Or will those meanings start to accrue value and then we'll just assume, okay, it is money? You get where I'm going?
I'm trying to avoid just saying no. I don't think that's ever going to happen. The answer is no. Wyoming can be doing a really good job. I think what Caitlin Long's doing, and I think the people who support what's going on in Wyoming right now, that is a professional body that is lobbying and working with a state government, and it's happening all over. It's not just Wyoming, but Wyoming's first. They're doing their best to provide clarity and do things and provide verbiage that matters. When the statutes get passed in Congress, presuming that it goes through Congress, that's going to be yet another round of verbiage that matters. I think presently I have something about 15 federal lawsuits. We've got the lawsuits against Coinbase, Kraken, Nano, who else? Coin Signals. God, I used to be able to do this a lot quicker. But all of those cases, especially the Coinbase case, that's going to create new law and new interpretation. They've already taken us. We're in the Southern District of Florida. We've already gone to the appeals court in the 11th Circuit in Georgia. That case is going to create new law. The verbiage has to change. I am a 16th century English major from the University of Michigan. I have no technical background whatsoever. I do a ton of talking at a ton of these conferences. This has been one of the most educated conferences from both the panelists and the audience. But it's the people, the regulators that have no experience who are going to dictate a lot of this on the verbiage side until people like Tezos and the Brightmans, as part of their lawsuits, have to defend themselves and create new law for new verbiage. So yes, I can joke that I want Jimmy Song at every one of my cases. Jimmy saying Bitcoin is money at every one of my cases, but I do agree that the verbiage is going to change. I don't believe the phrase code is free speech is going to be the one that wins out.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, each different government body has a different definition of what cryptocurrency is, because the IRS considers it property, and then the CFTC will say Bitcoin's a commodity, the SEC will say virtual currency is a security, and then FinCEN applies like a separate rule to all convertible virtual currencies. So it's, for one area to say it's free speech could come up, but Bitcoin's so nimble that it is a lot of different things all at the same time.
My tax return is very complicated, but I follow my own advice. I disclose everything, and I tell the government exactly what I have, what I've done, because I earn it, I got it, I transferred it. It's complicated as hell right now, and this goes back to what I said earlier. Basically, no one on the government side knows what the hell they're doing, and the laws are in conflict, and the definitions are in conflict. We are, as everyone has said today, in the beginning, the early part of the times, and we're only going to get better when we move forward. And there's nothing clear at the moment.
All right. Thank you very much. And this was awesome. Actually, a fun
Thanks,
panel.
Chuck.
Hey, and since we talked about wallets, here, each of you guys get an open dime right there, courtesy of Rodolfo of CoinKite. Thanks.